Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Fegan, and it has been a hot minute since I filmed a video. At this point I feel like it's been like 2 or 3 months. My hair is completely faded, it's been that long, also because I'm switching it up this month, which I'm sure you will see soon. But yeah, I have seen 33 movies since the last time I talked about movies. This is between February and March and April, so we're just gonna talk about all of them. I've got all 33 movies in alphabetical order. I've written down notes for this video, that's how seriously I'm taking it, and let's see how quickly I can talk about 33 entire movies in one video. First we have Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. This is about a group of space travelers. What are they? They're like space workers, and they're coming back to Earth, but they get this interception message on the way back, and they go to see what it's all about. Turns out it's an alien, as the title suggests. I thought this was really good. I thought it was well acted, thought it was interesting. I think part of the problem, part of the reason I didn't give it higher than 4 stars is because it like wasn't the best alien movie I've seen in the past couple months, and so I was comparing it to that, which I'll talk about later in this video. But yeah, Alien was very good. Next we have this movie, which I feel like I can't pronounce. It's either Amarcord or armachord. For some reason it's one of those words that I just like can't quite get right in my head. This was directed by Federico Fellini. I gave this 4 stars. This is about like an adolescent boy growing up in his like eclectic town in 1930s Italy. This was such a weird movie. It was so horny, unexpectedly so, but it was a great time. It was not my favorite Fellini, but also not my least favorite. Just generally a good time of a movie. Next we have Barton Fink, directed by the Coen brothers. I also gave this 4 stars. We had a very good month in terms of the beginning of the alphabet. This is about a New York playwright who goes to California to work for Hollywood, doesn't really want to, he feels like it's kind of selling out, and then what ensues is like this black comedy. I think I wrote down that it was like a comedy horror mosaic, because you never quite know what's going to happen next, both I think in terms of the plot and in terms of tonally, and I think that really works in the movie's favor. Next we have The Clowns, also directed by Federico Fellini, and this I gave a 3.5 star rating. For those of you who don't know, Fellini is very interested in clowns and the circus, and I feel like a lot of his films kind of deal either directly with the clowns or indirectly with the circus and this idea that like kind of life is a circus and we are all the clowns. You see things like this in 8.5 and in, oh my god, La Strada, and so it's kind of all over the place. And this I feel like brings it all together because this is like a pseudo-documentary about the rise and fall of the clown. I found the middle part of this movie kind of boring, but in finding it boring I found it interesting because I kind of confirmed Fellini's thesis, which is that like no one cares about the clown anymore, and even though this movie was made decades ago, I feel like it's even maybe more relevant now. Also, the boring middle kind of all led up to this like incredible final sequence, which is a thing I think about most about this movie. So I'm very glad I watched it, and I think if you're interested in like Fellini as artist and as man, I would definitely recommend it. For my first controversial opinion of this video, up next we have The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan. This I gave 2.5 stars out of 5, and for the plot portion of my notes, what I wrote for this is, it's the Batman movie with the Joker. I thought this movie was just so weirdly paced. It like, and not in like a fun, cool way. It's like, whoa, it's like kind of always like bringing you along for the ride. It's just like, let's have like a 30-second scene here that's not gonna do anything for anyone, and then just keep moving on. I wrote down in my notes, it was bizarrely paced, thesis-less, and what did I say, utterly boring? Frankly, borderline unenjoyable. I don't get the hype around this one. I mean, there are some good performances, but like, I feel like it was kind of gimmicky and just kind of flashy and for no one. Up next we have The Departed, directed by Martin Scorsese, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is like the most Boston movie of all time. This is a movie in which there is a secret police member in the mafia, and there's a secret mafia member in the police, and everything that ensues. This movie is like ridiculous, and yet so easy to love. I'm sure you're supposed to take it seriously, like it is like a serious mafia movie at times, but it's also so Boston. And I watched this, my boyfriend who's from Massachusetts, we watched it together for the first time, and so it was just like this absolutely insane, like the needle drops in that movie too, like when, oh, what is that? What's that aggressively Boston movie song called? I'm gonna put it here, the one with the bagpipes, you all know. Shipping Up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys. When that plays, it's just like, whoa, this is happening now. It was just a fun time. Next we have The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, directed by Luis Buñuel. I give this 2.5 stars. This is about like a group of wealthy people who keep going to sit down in a restaurant to eat dinner, but they never get to eat for like various reasons at each point. They sit down in a place What I wrote about this is that it was like thematically interesting, but practically just a slog. Like I think it was kind of boring. And like I appreciate what it was trying to do, and like I'm sure maybe if I revisited it, I'd find it like intellectually interesting, which I kind of did the first time. But I think I put a lot of stock into like my initial reactions to movies and like if they do anything for me, and this one just did nothing for me. Up next we have Down by Law, directed by Jim Jarmusch. This was a rewatch. I watched it for a friend who was seeing it for the first time, and I gave this 4.5 stars. This is about three men who are sharing a cell together in New Orleans, in a New Orleans prison, and they attempt to escape prison. You kind of get a little bit of the before, you get to know these men beforehand, you see them in prison, and then you get to see their attempt to escape. No movie in the entire world makes me as happy as this one. We've got Tom Waits, you've got John Lurie, who is like, I feel like a frequent Jarmusch collaborator. Also, Jarmusch is my favorite director. He can like do no wrong in my eyes. But this one especially, I feel like is just like brimming with life, and there are like scenes in this that just like I feel, oh, have so much energy and so much joy. And even though this is like a black and white prison movie, I don't know, it is so... His movies are always so tender about humans and about like relationships, and I feel like this one is no different. Up next we have Face Off, directed by John Woo. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is, to use my exact words, about an anti-terrorist agent who goes through a procedure to look exactly like a terrorist who's currently in a coma in order to gain information from the terrorist's people. That sounds interesting already, and then I'll tell you that the cast members are Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. Just like the dream team of hilarity. It's actually quite good. Like, I feel like this isn't a stupid movie. At the same time, it is, I feel like part of its charm to me is that like it is stupidly charming. I enjoyed this. I didn't think it was amazing, but I had a hell of a time with it. In what's probably another unpopular opinion, we have Falling Down, directed by Joel Schumacher. Shoemaker? I don't really know. Probably Schumacher. I give this a 1.5 out of 5. I really did not like this movie. This is about like a working class everyday man who revolts against all of society. And I am not against like the anti-hero or like the bad guy protagonist thing in art. I think that can be done really well. I just think this was like a poorly acted, poorly conceived, and really pathetic entry into that genre. I like don't know what it's saying that any of the other things in that category are saying. And yeah, and I think it was poorly acted, and I think it was kind of racist. I just don't think anyone needs to see this movie. Next we have Fireworks, directed by Takeshi Kitano. This I gave a 4.5 out of 5. This was one of my favorite first viewings of the past few months. You're following this retired Japanese police officer whose wife is having these medical troubles, like she's probably going to die soon, and so he kind of needs money for some of that, and so he gets into these shady deals. On a technical level, this was just like unbelievably good. The music was good, all the tension was really good, the sound design was really impressive. Like there would kind of just be like loud pops of noise in places you didn't expect, which I feel like actually added to this atmosphere. And then I feel like it straddles a line of these genres really well. Like it was a cop movie, but it was also kind of like a love story because you are watching this man and his wife. I feel like, yeah, it was a thriller at the same time as being like this slow, ruminative portrait, and I feel like the way it did both of those just like meshed so well together, and you could see this man kind of going in between his two worlds as the movie went back and forth between worlds. And this was just like an incredible movie, already one of my favorites of all time. Up next we have First Reformed, directed by Paul Schrader. I rewatched this with my mom. She was watching it for the first time. This is like my third favorite movie of all time. It's 5 stars, it's perfect. This is about a, is he a priest or a pastor? This is about a pastor of a small church, and the church is kind of like, not a gimmicky church, but it's very historic. People mostly visit, the people who mostly visit it are tourists. It like doesn't have a very large congregation. Meanwhile, there's another church in the town that like all the people go to. And it's coming up to its 250th year of being in existence, and it's going to have like this big event, and the pastor discovers that like one of the big sponsor of the event is this company that is really, really bad for the environment. And so this pastor is kind of grappling with environmentalism and also other stuff. I feel like there's so much going on in this movie and I'm not doing it justice. Ultimately though, I feel like this is one of the only movies, and probably like one of the only pieces of art that I feel like captures like a very specific cultural moment we're in right now. Like I don't think art knows how to like deal with environmentalism, because like that's not like a human conflict you can point to like person against person. And I feel like this movie understands the anxiety and the anger and the fear that comes with it. There's a moment I think about all the time where, you know how like churches have like those signs on the front, the pastor puts, "Will God forgive us?" out there, just like for what we've done to the planet. It's just such a good movie. It's so tense, it's so human, it's so raw. It might be up there as like my second favorite movie of all time. Who knows? You have to go watch this. Then we have Alphabetically Framing Britney Spears. I don't know who it's directed by. I gave this 3.5 stars, but it could be lowered. This is about Britney Spears and her conservatorship, and I think it was very informative, but the more I think about it and the more people have written about it, also maybe also too exploitative, because we're just still using Britney Spears to make money. But interesting and good. Then I watched a second movie with my mom. Actually, this one was first, but it's second alphabetically, and that is Frances Ha, directed by Noah Baumbach. This I also have rated 5 stars, is also up there in my top 5 movies of all time. This is about a 27-year-old dancer in New York, or she's a woman who really wants to be a dancer, but she has no idea what to do with her life. Her roommate Sophie is moving out to live with her boyfriend, and she is just adrift. This movie is quirky, if you will. It's kind of in many ways like rich white people problems, but I do feel like Baumbach kind of gets at that feeling of being young and not knowing what to do. It's also the best movie I've ever seen about female friendship. Like, what Frances and Sophie have together is, I feel like, so beautiful and not represented well enough in media. So yeah, this is a movie I would definitely recommend to anyone who doesn't know what to do with their life, because Frances doesn't either, and it's very comforting to watch. For what is definitely going to be my most controversial opinion in this video, next we have Full Metal Jacket, directed by Stanley Kubrick. I really did not like this movie. I gave it a 1.5 stars, a 1.5 star rating. I had heard about this movie that like the first half is awesome. Oh, what it's about. You follow these Marine trainees first in like the first half, and then they're in the Vietnam War in the second half. And I had heard that like the first half is amazing and iconic and so good, and then the second half like drops off. I didn't like either half. The first half felt exaggerated in a comedic in a way that I know it was at least partially intending to be comedic, because like the drill sergeant is like so over the top, but at the same time I feel like it ventured too far into comedy such that like its impact was lost. And there's an amazing scene at the end of like the first half of the movie that I do feel like is really good, but then by the time you get to the second half, it's just kind of a slog until again, like the end of the movie is pretty interesting, but it introduces characters that like it wants you to be invested in, but it doesn't actually do enough good by then to get you invested in them. I feel like it was a movie that it was shot very well. It was like, it looked nice, but I feel like it didn't do well enough by its characters to get the audience to care about it. Then we have Ghost, directed by Takashi Ito, which I gave 4.5 stars. This is a short experimental film that is ghostly and neon and amazing. It's like, I feel like 8 minutes long on YouTube, and just had the most incredible vibes of all time. And if you do watch nothing else from this video because you don't have the time or don't want to, go check out Ghost. It's on YouTube, or maybe Vimeo. Really good. Then my final Fellini, both for this video and the final Fellini that I watched, is Ginger and Fred, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This is about 2 older, used-to-be dancers. They used to do this routine where they were Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and they are coming together for like a final performance for this TV, I think, charity event. I think the satire on TV is really good, but I do think, again, like a lot of the middle of this film is kind of just like boring and tough to get through, but similar to The Clowns, I feel like there are some scenes at the end that really wrap it all nicely. And what's interesting about this movie is it has 2 of Fellini's biggest actors, whose names I'm forgetting. The woman Giulietta Messina, who I believe was actually married to Fellini, and Marcello Mastroianni, who is like the lead in La Dolce Vita and 8½, and they have never been in a Fellini together up until this movie, so I feel like it's kind of, it is a nice, like for someone who watched so many of his movies back to back, seeing them together finally was really interesting. But yeah, good movie, just not amazing. Next we have Grizzly Man, directed by Werner Herzog, which I gave 4.5 stars. This is a documentary about a man, like a real documentary about a real man who lived like with the grizzly bears as kind of a wanting to like conserve their lifestyle and protect them, but was kind of grizzly himself. Like, it seemed like he kind of wanted to be one of the bears. You find out very early in the movie, like in the first 10 minutes, that he was ultimately killed by one of the grizzly bears, and you just follow his own footage. This man like took footage of himself while he was taking care of the bears, and people who knew him with Herzog's voiceover over it. I don't watch a ton of documentaries, so this one kind of like blew me away. I feel like the subject matter was obviously very interesting, and I feel like he has healthy doses of both understanding and skepticism towards this man, because he did seem to be like a very, very complex, complicated man, and I feel like the documentary both acknowledges that without like shitting on him. Next we have Harold and Maude, directed by Hal Ashby, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is about like a depressed, oddball 20-something man who looks like a 14-year-old. I had no idea he was like 20-something until I looked up the synopsis of this, who has like a terrible mother, and he frequently goes to like other people's funerals, and he meets a 79-year-old woman at one of these funerals, and they develop first a friendship and then a relationship. People have pointed this out as like being like very Wes Anderson and very quirky, and it is a weird, weird movie. These characters are odd, but it is also, I feel like, kind of like Wes Anderson, so full of life and just kind of like trying to appreciate things. And you watch this 20-something kid who's like not enjoying life kind of learn to appreciate life through this very happy-go-lucky 79-year-old woman. We've arrived at my favorite movie, my favorite new movie I've seen in the past few months, and that is Ida, directed by Powell Pawlikowski, who is also the director of Cold War, which came out a few years ago. This was perfect. This is about a young Polish woman who is about to take her vows to the church, but first she kind of wants to learn more about her family, and so she sets off to do that. Stylistically, this is like everything I want out of a movie. It is in black and white and feels like justifiably black and white. It does this thing that I love. I've only recently discovered that I love this, but the camera doesn't really move usually. Like the camera is stationary and characters like move in and out of shots, which is the exact same style of Stranger Than Paradise, directed by Jim Jarmusch, which is my favorite movie of all time. Everything looks like a photograph. Because it's so remarkably well lit, especially given that it's black and white. I feel like it does so much to make each shot look like literally perfect. And I know this isn't true because like it's still edited and filmed, but it's almost like the camera is letting you make the judgments. It's letting you watch and like you decide what things mean, which I really love. This movie is so slow, but it also like it is doing so much about like family and identity and sexuality, because like this young woman is like, she's a young woman, and I feel like this movie is, it's kind of horny. Like the movie itself, like it's definitely sensual, but like I feel like there's just like this undercurrent. It's simmering, everything's simmering. And also it's like discussions of religion and are also so stirring and thought-provoking, and I like want to watch this again immediately. When I finish it, I wanted to watch it again immediately, and I don't think I can recommend this enough. Next we have Little Women, directed by Gillian Armstrong. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is about the 4 March sisters who are growing up in England with their mother while their father is away. This was the Winona Ryder adaptation done in the 90s, and I thought it was only pretty good. I wonder what I would have thought if I hadn't seen the Gerwig adaptation, which I thought was amazing, but this one just in comparison felt a little bit melodramatic, and I really did like Winona Ryder and some of the performances, but overall I feel like it just paled in comparison to the other adaptation. Next we have The Mirror, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. I was really excited about this because Stalker is one of my favorite movies of all time, but I only give this one a 3.5 star rating. This is about a dying man who is kind of, it's like a non-linear story of like a dying man recalling his past life. And it was shot beautifully. Like so many shots of this have stayed in my mind. But again, for some reason, I should probably be smarter about the way I watch movies, especially given that I then talk about them to an audience. But I do put a lot of stock, as I've said, into like immediately how punched I am. And not that like a movie has to be punchy, like Ida is not a punchy movie, but like there was just an intangible something between me and the mirror that made me not love it. I can't explain that intangible something, and this movie is probably better than a 3.5, but like my 3.5 is a rating for like a good movie, but like a 4 and above is one I connect with. And I just didn't really connect with this despite it being like obviously very well done. Then we have Mistress America, directed by Noah Baumbach. I give this 3.5 stars. This is about a college-aged woman who wants to be a writer, and she doesn't have a ton of friends, and so she reaches out to her sister-in-law to be, and they develop a friendship. This movie is so fast-paced. Like, not just like, ooh, things happen fast. Like, the dialogue literally is happening at like rapid fire. It is quirky, as I feel like a lot of Noah Baumbach stuff is, which I don't always mean as an insult, by the way. I feel like films can be quirky and good. But this one felt kind of shallow at times in a way that some of the other stuff did, and there were some amazing moments, but I think it's like a slight lack of realism, which I feel like is what he's good at because of the rapid fire thing, just detracted like half a point, and so 3.5 stars, good movie, but not great. Up next we have Modern Times, directed by Charlie Chaplin, which I also gave 3.5 stars, and this is about a man, it's like a slapstick comedy about a man working in a factory, and this one also is tough to rate. Similar to The Mirror, because I'm aware of the craft and I'm aware of how good it is, and yet like I have my experience with watching it. I just don't really find slapstick comedy funny, and like I can completely recognize how and why that would have been funny, and I'm aware that it's good at what it's doing, but at the end of the day it's not something that like you could show me the best slapstick comedy movie in the world and I'm probably not going to love it. And like by all accounts I haven't seen, this is the only Chaplin I've seen so far. Like, this was a well-done movie. It is a good movie. If someone told me they loved this movie, I wouldn't be like, you're wrong, it's a bad movie. But it's just not one that I had, like, any kind of connection to, just because, like, its comedy doesn't do a ton for me. Good movie, though. Then with friends, I watched National Treasure. I gave this 3 stars, and then with friends, I watched National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets, which I also gave 3 stars. The secret is that National Treasure 2, and I am not joking, is better than National Treasure. That's all you need to know. My next unpopular opinion of the video is I watched Scarface, directed by Brian De Palma, and I give this 3 stars. Not a bad movie. This is about a drug lord in Miami. There's drugs, and there's sex, and there's violence. It's like a gang movie? Can I call it that? Gangster movie. I think it's like a gangster film. What I mostly feel about this one is that I understand why it's iconic. Like, there are scenes and there were lines that I was like, whoa, I've heard people say that. But outside of its iconic status, I don't know what the movie itself does for the genre that other movies I've seen don't do better. Like, it was entertaining, but I could also anticipate and predict a lot of the story beats. And I feel like there are just movies in this genre that do it better. Even like, even The Departed does it, I mean, it's a very different movie, but like, for lumping together mafia, gangster, all of that mob, like, Scarface just isn't the one I'm ever going to return to. The most recent movie I watched is Seconds, directed by John Frankenheimer, and I give this 4 stars. This is about a man who, by using this company, which is like very, very underground, like only the richest of rich get to use this service, gets like a second chance of life because they stage his death, and through this procedure, a la face-off if you will, he gets like a new face and a new identity. I've discovered that something I really love is movies that like take place in our world but have like a slight thing like sci-fi or fantasy different. Like, that's what I love about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's just like completely the normal world plus this one little thing, and that's basically what this movie is. And it is so well done. Like, the camera work and the editing, especially in the beginning, both like create this sense of like banal, because like the reason this man does his procedure is because he's not happy with his life, and also I feel like it begins to introduce this horror, because like when he gets his procedures, I feel like any of us might feel like he's not entirely happy with it, and so like this whole movie I feel like just kind of nicely incorporates the banal with the horrific really well. The ending, which I didn't know anything about when I started, is amazing, and if you watch this movie, I recommend you don't look it up at all so you don't get spoiled about the ending. But yeah, just a really, really well done movie that I like hadn't heard of until I watched it. Up next we have Submarine, directed by Richard Ayoade. I have loved Richard Ayoade for so many years. I don't know if any of you have ever seen like those British panel shows like Never Mind the Buzzcocks or the Big Fat Quiz of the Year or something, but like Richard Ayoade was always my favorite on like any of those. But this movie I gave 3 stars. This movie is about a 15-year-old Welsh boy. It is basically a coming-of-age movie, and it was good. It was charming, but I feel like, kind of similar to other films in this video, it just like didn't do enough that is different from any other coming-of-age movie. I found that like it used tropes but didn't comment on them or didn't do them any differently from any other coming-of-age movie I've ever seen, and so it was a nice watch, but I do feel like it was kind of cliched. Then we have Spacy, directed by Takashi Ito, who is the same experimental film director. I give this 3 stars. I don't think this one did as much. It was very repetitive and did kind of create like a repetitive hypnotic thing, but I just felt like this one was a little bit more gimmick than anything else. Like, it was nicely edited, as like I feel like his stuff must be to create that effect, but this one kind of just felt like, well, what if we did this? And I did not find it as interesting. Next we have The Thing, directed by John Carpenter, and I feel like The Thing is the reason I didn't love Alien, because The Thing was almost perfect. I gave it a 4.5 star rating, but I feel like I could 5 it at some point in the future. This is about a group of researchers in Antarctica, and this thing that can kind of shapeshift, but is actually an alien, is on their base. And that's a big problem. It was just like technically perfect. Like I feel like the lighting and the acting and the dog acting, how do you get a dog to act that well? No offense. Like it just all came together to make this like perfect, technically immaculate thing. I haven't seen a lot of like the classic sci-fi or like classic horror movies, and so I didn't know what I was gonna think going into this, but like I loved this so much. Amazing movie. Continuing on a high note, next I have on this list, I guess, Three Colors Red, directed by Krzysztof Kieslowski. I gave this 4.5 stars, and this is also in like the might be a 5-star one day category, because oh my god. This movie is about a model who meets this retired judge who is eavesdropping on his neighbors, and the two of them strike up a friendship. And it's also following like a few other side characters. Like I feel like I've seen this somewhere almost described as like hyperlink cinema, because like characters' lives, like you witness pieces of them and then they come together. But I think what was so impressive about this movie is that its connections felt so intense despite them being so accidental. Like these two people should have nothing to do with each other, and yet the conversations they have and like the bond that is formed is so emotional and so interesting to watch. So like the dialogue is amazing, but I also feel like the filmic aspects too, like the lighting and the camera angles all just like created this incredible atmosphere. And I've only seen this one in blue, but I definitely like this one better than blue. And also the ending of this one, that's all I gotta say. Finally, good lord, this video has probably been like 30 minutes long. We have You Can Count on Me, directed by Kenneth Lonergan. I hope that's how you pronounce it, and I gave this 3 stars. Fittingly for the last movie, I forgot to write down what this was about. I feel like this was about like a high-strung woman whose brother, played by Mark Ruffalo, has to come stay with them because he doesn't have a ton of money. Mark Ruffalo's great in this. I feel like is kind of born to play this role. But I feel like one of the problems is that the main woman kind of has this pattern of like wanting something and then not wanting something, and like it's interesting maybe psychologically, but from a filmic aspect, like the same story beat happens multiple times, and so the movie itself begins to felt repetitive in a way that I feel like it didn't have to. Also, the music in this movie was so confusing. It straight up felt like a commercial at like every moment, like the music that was dropped, like an early 2000s commercial for yogurt at all times. It was just like so weird tonally, and I feel like it didn't have to be bad, but like the pieces just did not come together well. So yeah, those are the 33 movies I watched in the past few months. I'm sure this movie had, nope, this is not a movie, this is a YouTube video. However, this has probably been long enough to be a short little movie, given that I probably talked for like 30 minutes, so thank you so much for watching. If you watched this long, if you've seen any of these movies, please let me know what you think. If you have a recommendation for me based off my taste, which you probably have a little bit, oh my god, it just got cloudy out, and so I'm sure the coloration of this video has just changed. However, that take was just so long that I don't remember what I said at the beginning, so we're just gonna roll with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.